Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Games and Things. This Friday, it is Games and Things Spring Clearance Sale. 4 days only, Friday through next Monday. Everything in their 10,000 square foot showroom will be on sale. Some things even up to 50% off. Floor models, discontinued items, new arrivals, even custom orders are on sale this Friday, starting this Friday through next Monday at Games and Things. Corner of Kingston Pike and Lovell Road out in West Knoxville. OurGameRoom.com is where you can learn more, but certainly you want to stop by for their spring clearance sale as they continue to celebrate their 40 years in business. Games and Things. All right, let's welcome in our mystery guest down there. We have Chuck Cavaleris, longtime sports writer and media mogul here in East Tennessee. Thanks for joining us. I want to talk about Tennessee's football recruiting. Let's go ahead and take a look here. It's not great, as you know. This week, the Vols lost a coveted pair of twins who are Tennessee natives that chose Kentucky instead of Tennessee. You look at the SEC recruiting as it stands right there. Tennessee, 14th. You don't often see them at the bottom. This is 24/7 Sports has them ranked 14th. Only 2 commitments. But the 4 schools in blue there, those are all the new coaches. So the new coaches starting behind the 8 ball. And then you got Lane Kiffin, who a couple weeks ago we wondered if he were here, the recruiting would be better. Well, it's not at Ole Miss.
2 spots better,
That's
John.
right, yeah. But here's the thing. 24/7 Sports also this week had a story about how odd this cycle has been and how many teams, not just Tennessee, are off to slow starts this year because you've gone an entire year without official visits. So when you look at Tennessee and say, my gosh, it's April and you've only got 2 commitments, there are still 3 Power 5 schools who have 0 commitments at this point, which is remarkable. And in the case of the Wade twins who went to Kentucky, Destin Wade said this regarding UT's uncertainty. It was a deciding factor in our commitment, just not knowing if we were going to play in a bowl game or not, or whatever. The probation was a huge factor. Chuck, I'm not trying to carry water for Josh Heupel, but when you look at this, part of this, like a quarter of this, is Heupel and his recruiting. A quarter of it is the NCAA nonsense. A quarter of it is the fact that you're a new coach to begin with, because that's hurting all the other new coaches. Yeah. And a quarter of it is you haven't had any official visits. Am I carrying water, or is that fair for me to say I'm still not blaming this guy yet?
Well, you have to look at the mess that was inherited, don't you? I mean, and even on that list, John, you're not going to crack that top 5. So with what you had going on when you took the job, all the players that go into the portal, and we talked about it last week, a lot of the other things going on, I don't think it's fair to blame him, but I mean, I think it is up to him to bring some excitement back in terms of how you're going to play. And I think that's how you're going to turn this thing around and put an end to all the off-field incidents too.
There have been some people this week, the Wade twins thing, you can't even get 2 Tennessee natives over Kentucky. But then they come out and say it's a deciding factor was the NCAA issue. Again, maybe you could say, well, Heupel needs to recruit around that, recruit better than that, and over that, however you want to put it. But that's a pretty big ask for a guy that's been on the job for 3 months, in my opinion. Your thoughts? Am I wrong on that?
John, maybe you're carrying like a half-filled bottle of English Mountain spring water. Maybe that's all it is, which is worth your time. All those factors that you laid out and the percentages, I think that's probably about right. You'd like to see things better. And I do think a big part of this is the in-state factor, that it's, in this case, 2 players from inside the state after Ty Simpson went to Alabama, which isn't Josh Heupel's fault, or Jordan James went to Georgia, or if you just pull up the rankings of the top 10 to 15 players inside the state, and right now, Tennessee doesn't have a lot of advantages there, so I think that's frustrating. But it's also, it's the middle of April, and we've offered this reminder. A year ago, Tennessee was at or near the top of that SEC ranking. How'd it finish out? So what happens over the next 6 months? Can you make up ground with some of these players? Can they maybe even flip the Wade twins in December? I mean, that possibility exists. So I don't think Josh Heupel and the staff are happy with where things are right now. There is a chance for that to improve, and it ultimately will need to improve.
Yeah, and I think it's too early to get too upset about it. Is it a bit of a concern? I see that. However, Josh, as you pointed out, which I was going to mention, Tennessee had this incredible string for several months last year during COVID, and it's like, oh, look at this. And they were ranked maybe as high as number 2 in the country. It didn't turn out that way. There's a lot of time between now and December. The Wade twins could change their mind. Tennessee's performance on the field could change that. An NCAA
Yeah.
resolution could change that. There are a lot of things that are in play here. I would bet you of those 12 commitments at LSU and Georgia, I bet not all of 12 of them go to LSU and Georgia. There'll be some mind changing along the way. So I think it's too early to get too concerned about where Tennessee is right now. And I'm carrying water for Hyde.
I'll carry a little water early on, I guess. Get back to me in a year, and if they're still not recruiting well, all right.
Yeah.
But
We say wait and see with the staff just in general, right? I think
Yeah.
recruiting applies to that.
yeah, and I think also one thing that I hadn't really considered, I don't follow the national recruiting. I don't study that. So to see that story on 24/7 lay out school by school how even some of the bigger boys are behind the 8 ball right now, and it's because that factors in. And then when you have the two twins that ticked everybody off by not coming here, when they specifically say, deciding factor, that's hard to get around. And the problem is these NCAA things, I know that you laid out the hope for Tennessee, and that is that the NCAA says, we've got such a backlog and you worked with us, we'll accept your penalties. We may not know that for another year or two.
Or 3. Yeah,
Isn't
I
that
agree.
ridiculous?
Yeah.
And then you're going to be dealing with players being able to say this for another year or 2 or 3. That's what these guys inherited.
John, real quick, I'd add, years ago covered some of the recruiting. It's so much about relationships, too. You take a job and you're trying to jump in there, Kentucky and Louisville, or Virginia, whoever it is, they may have been recruiting these kids for 3 years. And then all of a sudden, you're trying to make up 3 years worth of ground, and it's not going to happen very often unless they just have a wow factor with the school. It's just not.
And a quick thing, Tennessee's case is different from some of these cases that have taken 3 or 4 years. It is different, but it doesn't mean you'll get a different time frame.
Right,
You don't know.
exactly.
But you can't compare it to the FBI case. It is different from that situation.
Yeah, I mean, the NCAA has made it, you got different people looking at different cases, and those guys rotate around. You never know what's coming. It would be like if I got a speeding ticket and you got a speeding ticket, but we got 2 completely different cops, 2 completely different judges. We both decided to fight it. We could get 2 completely different outcomes for both doing 65 and a 55.
That's right.
So you don't know what's coming. In this case, knowing Tennessee, I would be focused on the worst case scenario as opposed to the NCAA saying, no, all good. We'll accept that and giving you that answer in 6 months. That's not how things typically work around here. Unless you're talking Tennessee basketball, where the roster just keeps getting better and better. So Rick Barnes has the program in a better spot than it's ever been before, correct? Depends on how you look at it. We'll come back and discuss. Come on back on the Sports Source.